Hi all, today I'm going to be teaching you how to do a cool experiment, all to see how pollution or this food coloring might impact our amphibians and our reptile population while they are still eggs or while they are still developing. So let's take a look at what we will need and how to run this cool little experiment. For this experiment, we are going to need a couple of things, but honestly, we don't need too much. We obviously need our hard-boiled eggs. So these are 2 chicken eggs. Doesn't matter what type of eggs you use though. You're going to need your egg habitat, which is going to be 2 mason jars. These are going to be your enclosed spaces that your herps or your amphibians and your reptiles are going to lay their eggs. You're going to need substrate then. So amphibians lay their eggs in water for the most part, so we're going to fill 1 jar with water, whereas reptiles tend to lay their eggs on land. So we're going to simulate land by using rice. So you'll want rice. Keep in mind that we are going to be dyeing these foodstuffs. So just keep that in mind. You might have some funky colored rice for dinner one night later on. As I said, color, you are also going to need food coloring. This is going to simulate pollution that might be entering this habitat. You're also going to need labels. It's not going to be super hard to tell which habitat is which, the reptile versus amphibian, because we'll be using different substrates. But this also gives a really nice visual example of what reptiles and amphibians might look like or what specific species fall into which category. So we can label our habitats as being reptile or amphibian. We can color that in. If you don't have a coloring sheet or little images to print out, you can always just put some tape or dry erase marker and label reptile or amphibian. But otherwise, that's it. So let's get started. Now that we know what we need, let's start with our experiment. So we have our labels, we have our habitats. Now we need to get our herps to our habitat. So we have a reptile, it comes and it lays an egg in the soil. We have an amphibian like a salamander or a frog or a toad who lays their egg in the water. In order to make the soil habitat, add some rice. So we're just going to put some rice over top of our reptile egg. Reptiles like turtles or snakes will lay their eggs in the soil, and turtles with their powerful legs can kick and dig to push dirt back over top of the eggs. Keep them nice and safe and hidden. So we use our rice to bury our reptile egg. Then we add water to our amphibian egg. We want to make sure it's nice and covered. They all need that water. Now, unfortunately, due to human interactions in these ecosystems, we have the introduction of pollution. Toxic green, no! So we need to see what is going to happen to these eggs when we introduce pollution to the system. So pick your food coloring and add those drops to the system. Think about what are the different types of pollution that might enter an area. You're going to add it to both the soil, or the rice, and the water. And start to think about not just what pollution might enter, But how will it impact the various eggs, these babies, as they are developing? Now, there's something kind of unique about reptile eggs as compared to amphibian eggs. While amphibian eggs are more like this hard-boiled egg, there's not a real thick, solid shell that protects them. Reptile eggs, well, this is a chicken egg, but for the purpose, reptile eggs have a shell, something thick that can prevent all of this stuff from getting inside. They are not as permeable, or things can go through, as the amphibian egg. So keep that in mind too as you do this experiment. If you ever see a turtle egg, it's kind of leathery over top. How might that protect them as well? So we have all different types here in Pennsylvania. Sediment is actually one of our biggest pollutants, but we have other things like chemicals from cars off of roadways, all sorts of implications there. And think about what is going to happen to our babies. Which baby is going to survive the most? In a couple of hours, about 3 hours, we will take a look at the eggs within each system and see who is the most impacted. Give that rice a nice shake. And we'll also take a look at what happens to the inside of the egg. So now we can analyze our eggs and see what the pollution has done to them. So we'll take out our reptile simulation and examine. We can see that the egg that was in our soil does have evidence of pollution on the outside of the egg. So you can see that speckling there. And now we're going to take our knife and cut it open. This would be for us to see what has been able to get to the developing baby. And take a look, is there any pollution or color that was able to reach that yolk, or what would be that developing reptile fetus? And here we see that while there's a lot of speckling on the outside, it wasn't necessarily able to reach the inside. We'll do the same for our amphibian. So we'll take our amphibian out. It's been soaking in this water in our pond or stream. And this we can see has a much more, that's where my knife hit. But we can see that the egg itself is much more color saturated than the reptile egg was. We can cut that one in half as well. And we can take a look and we see that the color was able to actually get inside the egg. And while it hasn't touched the egg yolk itself, that pollution is getting closer and closer to the egg yolk as compared to our reptile egg. Now we can also think about what would happen to our amphibian egg had we let it sit in that pond water for a long time, for more than 3 hours. An amphibian, a frog, a salamander, a toad, it's not going to just leave its eggs in there for 3 hours and then have them hatch and leave. They're going to be in there for days and days on end. So being conscientious of our pollution source and how much is in our bodies of water can be really beneficial to making sure that our amphibian population is happy and healthy.